Very good evening, distinguished delegates, excellencies and colleagues, and very good morning and good afternoon and good evening for online participants wherever you are, and thank you all for joining. Even though I'm not the master of the ceremony, I would like to invite and introduce to our colleagues, to our dear participants, that we are going to enjoy a special cultural envoy of Mongolia, Mongolia National Assembly, with the order of Genghis Khan, and they are going to chair and bless the global land outlook. We are very soon to launch officially. So let us welcome the cultural envoy and Mongolia National Assembly.
Good evening, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, and honorable participants. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to the launch of the Global Land Outlook Thematic Report on Rangelands and Pastoralists by the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification. Mongolia is honored to be hosting the launch of this critical and timely report, and I'm pleased to share that today's event is being broadcast live all over the world through the Unccd media channels. My name is Unccd, and I'm a young climate justice advocate from Mongolia. It has been 5 years since I began to advocate for climate, clean air, and health equity. And in this time, I've had the opportunity to participate in high-level multilateral negotiations, including through the Climate Youth Negotiator Program to protect our climate and environment. I'm thankful to the government of Mongolia and the Ministry of Environment and Tourism of Mongolia for supporting children and youth like me to be a part of these important discussions. And today, I am grateful and honored to serve as your Master of Ceremonies. The report we launched today calls for urgent actions to stop the silent demise of our vast rangelands and the livelihoods that depend on them. It raises alarms about the threat of rangeland degradation on our climate, healthcare systems, food systems, and well-being of billions of people around the world. At the same time, the report offers a way forward, one that is based participatory and based on collective action. Indeed, multi-level, cross-sectoral, and mutually beneficial cooperation based on lessons learned is a prerequisite to act upon the recognitions of this thematic report. As such, today, in this hall and online, we are joined by partners who represent government agencies, international organizations, researchers and scientists, embassies, the private sector, civil society, and youth, all who will play vital roles in taking actions based on the findings of the thematic report and to ensure and to help ensure the human right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment for all. Now, without further delay, I am honored to invite to the stage His Excellency, Mr. Batko Nyamasar, Advisor to the President of Mongolia on Environment and Green Development Policy, to deliver the first keynote remark. Mr. Batko Nyamasar, please come to the stage.
Your Excellencies, it is indeed great pleasure to take part in launching Global Land Outlook, thematic report on rangelands and pastoralists, not because of the host country of the 17th session of the Conference of the Party to the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, but also the country represents dry land ecosystems and rangelands. Rangelands occupy over 50% of the global terrestrial surface and over 70% of the territory of Mongolia, as statistics shows. At the same time, for Mongolia, pastures and rangelands are the source of livelihood, subject of beliefs and worship and inspiration. What's more, the meaning of rangelands is a value of the coexistence of all living organisms between the endless sky and productive land. The philosophy of Mongolian pastoralists is deeply rooted in the dynamics of rangelands, so the sense of limits has been always in the essence. The main challenge of modern Mongolia is how to conserve the natural, social, and cultural values of rangelands under the high speed of development. That is why Mongolia was an initiator of the International Year of Rangelands and Pastoralists. This initiative focuses on the importance of rangelands as an integral ecosystem with environmental, social, and economic beliefs, which are usually undervalued. This is the voice of millions of pastoralists who demand secure land tenure and equal opportunity to develop and coexist with other land uses. There is much traditional and local knowledge, especially among indigenous people and other rangeland communities, which we need to revive through consolidated actions locally, regionally, and globally. Dear guests, with all these national and regional factors, as well as Mongolian commitments towards global environmental agendas through United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, COP17 and others, in my capacity, I would like to pre-announce that Mongolia shall take the leadership on cooperation toward healthy rangelands over Greater Asia through maintaining multilateralism, friendship, and equity, and restoring the healthy rangeland of the Greater Asia. Mongolian Legacy Program for the COP17 should commit to the further acceleration of policy recommendations highlighted in this report. May the land be healthy, productive, and remain the main source of all living being, this beautiful planet Mother Earth. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Batunya Masar. As a representative of the Voices of Youth today, I'm inspired by the commitment that Mongolia is taking in regional leadership. And I want to say that children and youth across Mongolia are looking forward to working with the government toward healthy rangelands. And we will also be looking to the government to ensure that the commitments you have made today are followed through with concrete action. And now, it is my distinct pleasure to invite to the stage His Excellency, Mr. Ibrahim Tia, Undersecretary General and Executive Secretary of the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification.
Excellencies, ministers, ambassadors, dear colleagues from the United Nations, dear participants in the room and around the world. First, let me thank the government of Mongolia for hosting this very important event, and thank the government of Mongolia for the leadership role it is playing in the world with respect to rangelands and pastoralists. We all know that the UN General Assembly adopted a resolution whereby the year 2026 is designed as the International Year on Rangelands and Pastoralists. And that came from the government of Mongolia. So please, a round of applause. I'm also very pleased, and this is not a coincidence, that Mongolia will be hosting the Unccd COP17 in the same year, 2026. So it's not a mistake that the International Year on Rangelands will be coinciding with the year Mongolia will be hosting COP17 of the Unccd. If I'm not mistaken, it may be the first COP ever hosted by Mongolia. So in 2026, you will have 197 parties to the Unccd, or maybe more, because we are still missing one, to join you here in Ulaanbaatar to celebrate the year and also to adopt very important resolutions, including certainly decisions that may be related to rangelands. So why rangelands are important? We just saw that they represent more than 50% of Earth's surface. But more importantly, 500 million people from around the world live of that. They have nothing else than that land and their animals. But more than the people, we also know that rangelands are the host of the magnificent species that are roaming in the savannas and that we are all paying thousands of dollars to go and see. These are the last living species on Earth as big fives. They are found in rangelands. But we also know that these communities that live in the rangelands, and today I understand is the International Day of Cultural Diversity, they are very diverse. One out of 4 languages in the world is spoken in rangelands. So when you see rangelands, see people, see the economy, and see the risks that are associated with the destruction of this ecosystem. You know, I'm a forester by training, and when you go to see number of trees, they are counted as forests. And when these trees are cut down, we have a name for it, deforestation. Rangelands, pastoral lands, meadows, grasslands, steppes, they have different names. So we are confused as to how to manage that land. But more importantly, when rangelands are converted into other activities, they are not called deforestation or de-rangelands. They are called development. We destroy rangelands for agriculture. We destroy rangelands for other activities and in the name of development, but we do not see the tree falling, and the tree falling always comes with emotion. But a small plant being destroyed does not appeal any emotion on us. And that is one of the problems. This is why we call it a silent demise. Because these ecosystems, they are dying unnoticed until we see the consequences that they may have, that destruction may have. And these consequences may be multiple. Let me just give you a few of them. Rangelands have a great carbon stock. They are not accounted, they are not as important in the general public as forests are. Because whenever you speak about climate change, people think about forests, and tropical forests in particular, not about rangelands. Rangelands have a stock of carbon that needs to be preserved. But when you destroy rangelands, you destroy societies and economies. And what it means that communities that have been living in peace for years and millennia are now bound to fighting each other because pastoralists and farmers are fighting for the piece of land that is still fertile, or for the last water point when it comes to scarcity of natural resources with a growing population and a growing middle class and a growing demand on one hand and a shrinking natural resources. You have reached a point where conflicts occur. So security is a big risk. Many people do not realize that the destruction of our rangelands is also a source of migration. Where would they go? What is left to the pastoralist community to do when the ecosystem is destroyed, when the economy is destroyed? They have to flee. They flee to the next city, they flee to the next country, or further afield. But it is a major source of migration. Just look at the countries where migration, the largest mass migration is coming from. They are forced migration. However, the responses from the public service and from the private sector is absolutely insufficient. This report calls for much more attention to be paid by policymakers on rangelands, because again, they are important for us, they are important for our economy, but there are very few decisions that are made to protect them. We know land tenure. And when you say land tenure, again, your mind will come to agriculture. Because in agriculture, if you are a farmer, you can have a land that is registered under your name. When you are a pastoralist, there is no registration because it's a common land. And therefore, who comes, the first come would be the first to be served. So it is important, therefore, that we change our policies vis-à-vis these rangelands, and we also make sure that we register these lands for the activities that are organized in there. I'll just stop here to say that COP16 this year in Saudi Arabia in December, 2nd to 13th of December, is a very good opportunity for all of us, for the international community as a whole, to come together and discuss these issues. Rangelands is an issue that has been already mentioned, requested by a party to the UNCCD to be discussed and negotiated. So COP16 will be your first opportunity to have a proper discussion and negotiation about rangelands. But in the lead up to COP17, you will have another opportunity in 2025 and 2026 to have these discussions and bring this issue again, if you wish, to Ulaanbaatar for a proper discussion and maybe for a proper decision about rangelands. So once again, I would like to thank the government of Mongolia, to thank you as participants, but I would be remiss not to say a word about youth, because the MC is a very dynamic person. I would like to thank her for the work that she does. On 17th of June this year, which will mark the 30th anniversary to the convention, is also the International Day on Drought and Desertification. We have a theme which is related to intergenerational relationship between young and less young people, because we have to come together to manage this land. So it's a tribute to the youth of the world, especially in developing countries, to actually take care of this land, to take care of wetlands, take care of climate, and take care of all the communities. So land is our best asset, and we would like to really thank the youth of the world and to thank you all for your participation here today and for your contributions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ibrahim Tia, not only for your words pointing to the urgency of protecting our rangelands, but also highlighting the importance of intergenerational equity. But also, I know that you have a very long-term commitment to the environmental protection and conservation sector in Mongolia, so I'm very also thankful for that. And now, I'm pleased to give the stage to our next keynote speaker, His Excellency, Mr. Batirtan Batulti, Member of the Cabinet and the Minister of Environment and Tourism of Mongolia.
Your Excellency, Mr. Ibrahim Thiaw, United Nations Under-Secretary General and Executive Secretary to the United Nations Convention on Combat Desertification, whom paying visit to Mongolia and distinguished delegates, I'm deeply delighted for the official launch of the Global Land Outlook thematic report on rangelands and pastoralists, product by the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification with all of you. Taking this opportunity, I would like to thank the Secretariat of the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, lead experts, and the team of scientists who prepared this report, which is highly relevant to inform decision makers in Mongolia and around the world. Mongolia, as a custodian of the largest grasslands in Eurasia, has always been a champion for protecting the health and productivity of rangelands. This is evident in our history and political economy. Over 70% of the Mongolian land area is used for extensive grazing. About 50% of the population are herders who follow traditional livestock grazing practices. Unfortunately, national monitoring and evaluation show that more than 70% of land under pastoral land use is degrading, the turning point of which coincides with socioeconomic transformation, the current trends in climate change, especially disastrous weather conditions, have almost doubled in all regions of the country. We need to reconsider our development pathway towards sustainable, green, and equitable growth. Mongolian traditional knowledge is built on the appreciation of resource limits, whereby mobility and adaptation are key to livelihood strategies based on shared responsibilities for rangeland resources. Time is another part of Mongolian tradition. Mongolian herders say, "Цаг цагаараа байдаггүй, цахилдаг хөхөөрөө байдаггүй," which in short means everything is in a dynamic state. So that dynamism, which depends on how the sun rises, what color is the sky, and how the wind blows, is the defining characteristic of pastoral culture. As we undergo socioeconomic transitions, we need to plan for the future. We need to consider traditional knowledge and pastoralist practices, accept the multifaceted nature of rangelands, and strive for equitable land governance system that preserve this social ecological treasure. During the last 30 years, Mongolia brought under the protection 22% of its territories. So as not to diminish the rights of traditional pastoral communities, the law on protected areas allows herders to use land within the protected areas in a traditional way of grazing. This approach has helped our herding communities cope with and overcome disasters. In my final words, on behalf of the government, I would like to reiterate that in the lead up to 2026, the International Year and the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, COP17, through its incoming presidency, we will closely collaborate to create unique momentum to join forces to conserve rangelands, pastoralists, and their enormous values, cultural, environmental, and economic, which cannot be overstated at the same time, to increase the visibility of the nomadic countries. Thank you.
Pleasure to introduce our final keynote remark. I'm honored to invite to the stage His Excellency Mr. Tapan Mishra, the United Nations Resident Coordinator from Mongolia.
Sembetskano, Orignment. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Undersecretary General Ibrahim Thiaw, your excellent speech was very good to talk about the context in Mongolia. Welcome in your first visit to Mongolia, and I'm happy that you are looking at the multiple facets around the world and bringing it to Mongolia, and I thank you for your kind words in the context. Your Excellency, Minister Batardin Batulzi, the Minister for Environment and Tourism, for your leadership in this area and for bringing COP17 in the UNCCD to Mongolia. And I know that as our Undersecretary General mentioned, that we will have the year of the pastoralist and rangelands in Mongolia in 2026. It's a great coalition of the two things together. That's a great thing together. And obviously, Professor Batkhu Nyamosor, our advisor to the President, for your wisdom and for your strong support on the environment dimensions of Mongolia and climate issues. I want to raise three big issues today. First, on behalf of the whole excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the United Nations, and especially our colleagues here, both FAO and UNDP, which are strongly engaged on this issue, along with the UN country team together. The first issue is that we are closely working with the leadership of the government around these issues of climate and environment. And we strongly stand to support the priorities of this government to lead this country towards a much more brighter future for the climate action and environmental challenges that are forward. The second issue is about the situation currently. Mongolia signed its first National Plan of Action for Combating Desertification, NPACD, in 1997. The population of Mongolia at that time was 2.34 million. And the livestock numbers was about 28.6 million. Over 30 years, it's changed. Population has grown by 1/3, which is now 3.45 million. And the population, the herd of the animals, last summer on 30th of June, was FAO and NSO's count was 85 million. It has reduced with some amount of meat export and some amount of, we lost 7.6 million animals to the zoo this year, and we are currently about close to 65 million. Now this is unsustainable. At that time, we said that these pasture lands are degraded. 76.8% of Mongolia's land stands to risk of desertification. 22.9% is either severe or very severe land degradation. This is unsustainable. We need to look at this together of how do we really look at this challenge, that when we look at COP17 in 2026, and as you said, that in COP16 in Saudi Arabia, we can look at the pasture land dimension. Because the issue that you raised about internal migration because pasture lands are destroyed, Mongolia's population has moved from the rural areas to the urban cities, and to Ulaanbaatar currently holds about 47% or 1.57 million or 1.67 million people in the city, which is almost half the population. And that's because in the severities of zoods, extreme winter conditions, the pastoralists and the herders have lost their livestock, and they have moved in search of other occupations in the city, which is congesting the city beyond its normal living. So we need to recreate conditions which are convenient and conducive to pastoralism and to nomadic herding and agricultural development in a better managed way. And the third factor today I'm saying is that, yes, there is hope, and we talked about the youth of Mongolia, and I'm looking at Mongolia's actions that the government has taken. Currently, we have a new law and a new initiative called the New Cooperative Movement for the Herders, and to bring back a solidarity amongst herders to have a more professional and scientific approach towards agriculture so that we can help our agriculturists to be more effective in not only having, during the intensive winter months, intensive farming, which can be more productive, and at the same time, we can help restoring the pasture lands better. With that hope, I'm here today looking at this event, launching the way forward towards COP17 in terms of the release of this document today. And thank you again, and look forward to working closely on behalf of the United Nations with the government of Mongolia and Unccd to ensure that we in Mongolia benefit from the way forward. Mashik Baitla, Sansakni Husi, Amjil Husi, Daral Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Tapan Mishra, for your words and also your devotion to bringing diverse development stakeholders together for sustainable development of Mongolia. And thank you to all four of our keynote remarks. And we now move on to the presentations to introduce the main outcomes and findings of the Global Land Outlook thematic report on rangelands and pastoralists. Our first presenter is joining us online is Dr. Pedro Maria Herrera Calvo, the lead author of the thematic report on rangelands and pastoralists. And as Dr. Herrera Calvo is joining us online, please divert your attentions to the screen.
Thank you. Good afternoon. First of all, I also want to express my gratitude to the government of Mongolia hosting this act, for inviting me, of course, but specifically for being at the forefront of recognition and support pastoralists and to the land they manage. The challenges are there, the risks too, but your commitment right now is getting us closer to a better scenario. Also, I want to express my gratitude to the Unccd, represented by its executive secretary, for stepping up and developing this report and for opening a new line of work, bringing rangelands and pastoralists to the first line of land degradation neutrality, where they actually belong. This report has a truly collaborative effort behind it. It has involved many people that have contributed with their experience, expertise, and capacity. Under UNCCD guidance and supervision, represented by the good work of Sasha Alexander and all the other colleagues that have participated, many people have collaborated as case study providers, contributors, reviewers, counterpart researchers, all the way down to the report you have in your hands. The integrated, interdisciplinary, and participatory approach that this report represents, which UNCCD and other international institutions, along with a lot of pastoralists and pastoralist network themselves, are applying to rangelands, is a clear sign that we can stop rangeland degradation and offer a positive solution to halve our land surface and to so many people depending on rangelands for their livelihoods. So, rangeland degradation is a serious problem. We are losing our rangelands. Despite covering 54% of the land surface, they are often mistreated. So more than 25% and maybe more than 50% of rangelands are degraded. We can see it. Erosion, fertility loss, salinization, compaction, conversion, fragmentation, bare soils, desertification. Rangeland degradation threatens food production and security, and extremes drought, flood, and biodiversity loss. But this rangeland degradation is often invisible. This situation is directly affecting the livelihoods of 500 million pastoralists, more than 2 billion rangelands inhabitants, 1/6 of the world food production, and 1/3 of the soil carbon stocks. A portion of land at least the size of North America is already undergoing degradation processes, and a portion of rangelands the size of India is strongly to extremely degraded. Rangeland needs sustainable management. Rangelands are managed lands. If they are well managed, they provide goods and services. If they are badly managed or abandoned, they degrade, which leads to depleted production and ecosystem services, poverty, and hunger. Besides, rangeland constitute the ultimate lifeline for millions of rural people living in harsh environments. Poor rural communities, evicted pastoralists, conflict displaced, and other people in risk of marginalization. Conversely, this rangeland pastoral activity bring them food and hope, even under harsh conditions, even when degrading. So pastoralists and indigenous people have survived in these environments for millennia. They have co-adapted to the rangelands, and the rangelands have co-adapted to the people. So we can learn from them, enriching our science and our knowledge on how to improve the rangeland sustainable management. This way, protecting pastoralists, protecting their livelihoods, their culture, their mobility, preserves both productivity of rangelands and social benefits for everybody. Some of the recommendations included in this GLOW thematic report open a new path toward rangeland-based solutions by setting rangelands at the heart of land degradation neutrality. How can we mobilize, how can we develop action to get those targets? First, by approving supportive policies, supportive legal frameworks, and supporting more sound land rights, land tenure. Second, by stopping rangeland conversion and restore the degraded rangelands. We know how to do this. We know how to do this even maintaining the productivity of rangelands. We also need to promote participatory, gender-responsive, and multi-stakeholder institutions and governance. Governance is key for restoration and is key for sustainable management. We also need to support mobility, to support the multifunctionality of pastoralist production, to support the flexible use of the uncertain resources that lie on rangelands. We also need to enable adapted and innovative investments and risk management tools. We can't invest in rangelands the same way we invest in forests or in crops. Rangelands have their own personality, and they need specific, flexible, adapted investment too. And they need their markets. They need to develop specific value chain strategies for rangeland productions. They need to follow basically the recommendations that we have already depicted in this report. So the main contribution of this report could be a better understanding of rangelands and pastoralists with an upgraded conceptual framework, search to improve knowledge on rangelands initiatives through the more than 60 case worldwide displayed in the report, to improve the way we manage rangelands and the way we make our project on improving rangelands, analyzing the past, analyzing the failure of current and past projects, and trying to improve the way those projects are implemented in the field, integrating sustainability and production, and enhancing the management, the sustainable rangeland management, and the participatory governance approaches, thriving on multifunctionality, diversity, recognition, gender issues, better investment, and all in all developing a new narrative for sustainable rangelands management. This way, we are trying to develop global collaborative support for rangelands and pastoralism that is joining together to the other UN conventions, to the other international players, to the pastoralist networks, together to celebrate the International Year of Rangelands and Pastoralists in 2026. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Herrera Calvo. And I invite to the stage our next presenter, Dr. Mandach Nyamtireng, researcher at the Institute of Geography and Geoecology of Mongolia, to speak on how Mongolia can implement the key findings of this report on the ground.
Excellency, colleagues and friends, I was asked to present about rangeland situation in Mongolia and its challenges and solutions, possibly. So let me start what is the rangeland for Mongolia. Rangeland of Mongolia stretched from north to south, from taiga to desert, from the west to east, from mountains to plains. We're holding around 15 different nations here in this land and about 20 different languages. So rangelands for Mongolia is the most symbol and it's symbol and identity of Mongolian nationalities. So to date, Mongolia did a lot since the democratic way of development. We tried to improve our economic situation. Oh, it's very hard to manage the microphone. And all our policies for up until now is directed to increase, protect, improve, and in short way, it all drives to increase in livestock number. And unfortunately, it also caused a lot of degradation processes, which is You can see from these maps, all these red regions are the degraded areas. And basically, most of them considered as a consequence of bad management of rangelands. We have many economic stimulus to increase number of livestock, as well as to improve the livelihood of pastoralists. And as you see, the more stimulus from economic policies, the more we increase in the livestock, the more we are causing overgrazing, and the more the degradation goes. Consequence of degradation also pronounced in different sectors. One of them is the economy, especially if we count the GDP from livestock sector. We see a lot of drop-off from the livestock sector. We are constantly losing our livestock number just because they are not really adapted for the current climate situation. Many different social outcomes, of which I would like to highlight health. Public health sector is directly impacted by land situation, and we are increasing in many different diseases, especially the cancer case in Mongolia. We also, you see that the economy, especially economic downfalls, are causing the migration from rural to urban and from urban to foreign countries. And this is a short timeline of different sort events. And from 90 to 2000, we had this sharp increase of livestock just because of privatization of livestock. And you see that curve that it goes up and down, because at that time the land couldn't afford the adaptation of such a large number. Another drought event happened in 2000 and 2011. Again, the curve goes up and down. And all the same, in all the three periods, we see that we have sharp increase of livestock number and a sharp decrease because of the climate and because of the system of the rangeland management itself cannot hold or adapt to that change. To date, we have different monitoring systems over the rangeland. I highlighted two largest ones. And unfortunately, even though these systems are quite new, these implications of this monitoring system are not well pronounced in decision making. So I would like to call all the participants, especially who are representing government organizations, to pay attention, because Mongolian scientists, Mongolian researchers, and Mongolian land managers are doing their job, and they're producing somehow near real-time information to make your decision better for people. We have a lot of traditions. I just have tried to make it easy to you to show how different mountains, different peoples in different mountains are moving around the whole year, from valleys to mountains, from mountains to slopes. And this tradition is unfortunately lost, is almost losing, because we have different development sectors rapidly increasing, especially mining, that's limiting the mobility of herders. The increased number of livestock herders is another factor why the mobility of pastoralists are decreasing. Currently, with the support of many development organizations, we are trying to support Mongolian herders with the sustainable land management technologies. They are different in scale, they are different in time, but in general, 4 different groups of sustainable land management technologies are here in a place. And this is my last slide. And what I want to mention that what we learned from the past is not everything is working through copy-paste. We have to consider people, we had to consider place, we had to consider willingness of local population, what they want to do and what they want to do. Not the GDP measured economic growth is not always the development, and it is not always supporting the environment. The subsidies, another thing which we need to rethink, because it doesn't sometimes mean responsibility. So we need to counterbalance between subsidies and other disincentive mechanisms. The responsibility comes with the strong education, and from now, the Mongolia and especially those countries with the rangeland, they should think about educating and promoting legacy of traditions. And the last, I want to note that we need to not mix value chain with the profit chain. That's why we are failing here in the rangeland of many IMAX of Mongolia. So we need to treasure values of rangeland differently. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much to both presenters for delivering action-oriented presentations on the way forward. And as your Master of Ceremonies, I also want to express my deep appreciation, gratitude, and congratulations for the launch and publication of this thematic report. And now that you've heard some opening remarks and the presentations, we open the floor to you. We welcome comments from both inside the hall and for those joining us online over Zoom. You may give your comment in either English or Mongolian. Due to time constraints, we're only able to take 1 comment from inside the hall and 1 comment from online. For participants who are in the room with us, please request the mic by raising your hand and stating your comment. And for the participants joining online, please also raise your hand over Zoom, and we will make sure to display your video so that we can hear your comment as well. Once you take the floor, please introduce yourself and the organization that you represent very briefly and state your comment. So I already see that we have 1 comment from the floor. Please go ahead.
Well, thank you very much. I see that the mic has traveled to me, so thank you. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Vinod Ahuja, FAO representative here in Mongolia, and working very closely with the Ministry of Environment and Tourism, with the minister and other colleagues, and also the Ministry of Agriculture. And I'm really sort of pleased to see this thematic report on rangeland and pastoralist. About a year ago, we had actually organized an event in the middle of Gobi to bring attention on climate change, land degradation, and desertification in partnership with the Ministry of Environment and Tourism, and exactly sort of leading up to the International Year on Rangeland and Pastoralists. So I will just make 2 points there. One, I think when we talk about climate change, and in Mongolia already, the proportion of greenhouse gases coming from agriculture has exceeded 50%. So it's a huge thing. But agriculture also offers a lot of opportunities. I think agriculture and food systems probably give us the maximum number of win-win opportunities than any other sector, both in terms of mitigation and adaptation. just by investing into productivity enhancement through climate smart agriculture, we can actually address both the issues of livelihoods and the issues of greenhouse gases mitigation. So there is an opportunity. There's a challenge, but there's also an opportunity. The challenge, of course, is in terms of financing. I think agriculture probably needs much more development finance and the public sector finance because a lot of the interventions that we have are not commercially viable. That's one point I wanted to make. The second one, where Tapan talked about the number of livestock in Mongolia, and clearly, and I agree fully with you, that this is not sustainable. Having said that, I also want to point out that livestock is actually a very important element of the equation when it comes to addressing desertification. Oftentimes, we blame everything on the livestock, but so many places in the world, we've actually shown the livestock's contribution to rangeland rehabilitation. So it's not really that the livestock is a problem, it's the number that's a problem, I agree. But what we need is a process that can actually bring livestock and pastoralists into this process of adaptation, into this process of policy making. And I'm very, very optimistic. The Mongolia will play that role because there is a tradition, there's a connection to the land, and Mongolia is already showing the leadership. So those are the 2 points that I wanted to make. But otherwise, let me end by saying our commitment to working with the government of Mongolia in addressing these issues. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for those very positive remarks. And is there anyone online? All right. All right, I don't see that there's anyone online who wants to make a comment. So I will now move on to the closing of this part of today's event. And I want to offer my closing remarks. So again, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, and honorable participants, Mr. Ibrahim Tia, you said in a statement before that to achieve the ambition of our leaders, we need to change our perspective. Land restoration should be seen as an opportunity rather than a challenge. I want to add to this and say that land restoration is also a collective imperative. The lands and waters with which you grew up with and with which I'm growing up with will no longer be here. And they're disappearing rapidly due to desertification, land degradation, sand and dust storms, drought, and much, much more. The message today to me as a representative youth is very clear. Decisive and urgent action to address the silent demise of our grasslands and rangelands as a matter of justice and survival. To recognize and enforce legitimate land rights in order to reduce and avoid rangeland conversion. To adopt and support pastoralism-based strategies. To institutionalize the effective engagement and decision-making processes of indigenous, local pastoralists and rangeland communities, and children and youth. And for all stakeholders and partners here, to do our part for the safety, security, health, and well-being of the billions of us who depend on and also cherish our rangelands. And I hope that when we meet back here in Mongolia for the 17th session of the UNCCD Conference of the Parties in 2026, in the International Year of Rangelands and Pastoralists, we have made good on the promises and commitments that we've made today, and that we've taken action on the thematic report and its outcomes. And in this moment here, I hope is the beginning of Mongolia's leadership in collective action based in science. And with that, I invite you to the next part of our global launch event, the networking session. We hope you'll use this time to make connections and to have discussions about everything that you've heard today. Throughout the networking portion of the event, we will play 4 videos. First, the UNCCD Land Anthem, Born from the Land. Second, the Land Anthem translated into and performed in Mongolian with the title, We Cherish Mother Earth. Third, Women, Girls, and Land Campaigns Her Land video. And finally, a video introduction to the International Year of Rangelands and Pastoralists. To those who have joined us online, please enjoy these videos, and thank you for being with us today. And to those who are in the room, please enjoy the videos. We have some refreshments coming your way. And most importantly, please enjoy our conversations. Thank you very much.